The stars looked cold and distant through the thick glass of the bridge windows. Fleet Admiral Crixtal stood with his forearms crossed behind his back, watching the endless black of space. His reptilian skin was dark green with yellow stripes that showed his high rank in the Vorthak Empire. Around him, the bridge of the massive warship Dominion's Edge buzzed with quiet activity. "Admiral," called out his sensor officer, a younger Vorthak with bright orange markings. "The fleet reports all ships ready for the next jump." Crixtal nodded slowly. Behind him stretched the largest war fleet the Vorthak Empire had ever built. 847 warships of different sizes floated in perfect formation. The smallest ships were still twice the size of most alien vessels they had fought before. The largest battleships were like floating cities, armed with enough weapons to destroy entire planets. "How many systems have we taken now?" Crixtal asked his second-in-command. 17, Admiral," replied Commander Vexrin. "All of them fell within days of our arrival. The local species either surrendered or were destroyed." Crixtal felt proud. The Vorthak way of war was simple and effective. They built bigger ships, brought more weapons, and used their superior numbers to crush any enemy. It had worked for over 200 years. No alien race had ever stood against them for long. "What is our next target?" he asked. "The human colony worlds in the Kepler 442 system," Vexrin answered. "Intelligence reports show they have only basic defenses. 3 small planets with mining operations and trade stations." Crixtal had heard of humans before. They were a young race that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Their ships were small and their weapons were weak compared to Vorthak technology. Most importantly, they had no real military tradition. The intelligence report said humans preferred talking and trading to fighting. "Perfect," Crixtal said. "An easy victory to show the galaxy that the Vorthak Empire cannot be stopped." The bridge crew prepared for the jump to hyperspace. Crixtal felt confident. Soon, 3 more worlds would belong to his empire. Several light years away, Captain Hyunwoo Kim sat in the command chair of the human destroyer Indomitable. The bridge was much smaller than the Vorthak flagship, but it hummed with efficient energy. The crew of 42 worked at their stations with calm focus. "Captain," said Lieutenant So-Young Park from the tactical station, "long-range sensors are picking up something big." Hyunwoo turned in his chair. So-Young was young but very good at her job. She had spotted enemy fleets before anyone else many times. "How big?" he asked. "Very big, sir. At least 800 ships, maybe more. They just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system." The bridge became quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The Vorthak Empire had finally decided to attack human space. "Communications," Hyunwoo called to Jin-Ho Lee at the comm station. "Send a coded message to Earth Command. Tell them the Vorthak fleet has arrived. Use emergency channel 7. "Yes, sir," Jin-Ho replied, his fingers moving quickly over his controls. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. They were scared, but they stayed at their posts. Good. Fear was normal, but panic would get them killed. "Mijin," he said to the sensor officer, "I want detailed scans of every ship in that fleet. Power signatures, weapon types, shield frequencies, everything." Lieutenant Mijin Choi nodded. "Already started, Captain. It will take some time to scan them all." "We have time," Hyunwoo said quietly. The Indomitable had been patrolling the outer edge of the system for 3 days. To anyone watching, it looked like a routine patrol. The ship moved slowly, checking asteroid fields and monitoring space traffic. But Hyunwoo knew the truth. They were not there by accident. Human intelligence had been tracking Vorthak fleet movements for months. The attack on Kepler 442 was expected. The Indomitable was there for a very specific reason, though the crew did not know it yet. "Captain," So-Young called out, "the alien fleet is moving. They are heading toward the inner system, but some ships are changing course toward us." Hyunwoo nodded. "How many?" "Looks like about 50 ships. They are forming a circle around our position." "Perfect," Hyunwoo said quietly. So-Young looked confused. "Sir? Nothing, Lieutenant." "Continue monitoring their movements." On the Vorthak flagship, Admiral Crixtal studied the tactical display. The single human ship looked very small compared to his mighty fleet. "Just one ship?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral," his sensor officer replied. "A destroyer-class vessel. Crew of about 40. Light weapons and basic shields." Crixtal laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "They send one ship to face our entire fleet?" "It appears to be a patrol vessel, Admiral. Probably just unlucky to be in the system when we arrived. Or very lucky, Krixtal said. They will be the first to witness the power of the Vorthak Empire. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to the human ship. Let us give them a chance to surrender before we destroy them. The message reached the Indomitable a few minutes later. Krixtal's face appeared on the main screen, looking down at the human crew with obvious contempt. I am Fleet Admiral Krixtal of the Vorthak Empire. His translated voice boomed through the bridge speakers. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and you will be allowed to live as prisoners. Refuse and your ship will be destroyed. The bridge crew looked at their captain. Hyunwoo stood up slowly and straightened his uniform. He looked calm, even though enemy warships surrounded his small destroyer. Jinho, open a channel, he said. The communications officer activated the transmitter. Hyunwoo faced the screen where the alien admiral waited. Admiral Krixtal, Hyunwoo said in a polite voice. I am Captain Kim of the Earth vessel Indomitable. Thank you for your offer, but we must decline. The alien admiral's eyes widened in surprise. You refuse? That is correct, Hyunwoo replied. We will not surrender. For a moment, no one on either bridge spoke. Then Krixtal began laughing again. Brave but stupid, the alien said. Very well, Captain Kim, you have chosen death over wisdom. We will destroy your ship in exactly 10 minutes. Use that time to make peace with whatever gods humans believe in. The transmission ended. The Vorthak ships began moving closer, their weapons powering up. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the crew waited for orders. Mi-jin looked up from her sensor station. Captain, I am reading massive energy signatures from their weapon systems. They mean to destroy us, Hyunwoo nodded. I know, Lieutenant. Should we try to run, sir? Asked Taemin Park from the weapons station. No, Hyunwoo said calmly. We stay exactly where we are. He pressed a button on his command chair. All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Red lights began flashing throughout the ship. The crew moved to their emergency positions with practice speed. But instead of fear, something else filled the air. Anticipation. Hyunwoo looked at the tactical display showing the Vorthak ships closing in. Everything was going exactly as planned. The aliens had no idea what they were really facing. Mi-jin, he said quietly, send the signal. The sensor officer pressed a series of buttons. A coded transmission shot out from the Indomitable in all directions. To the Vorthak, it looked like a distress call. But hidden in the signal was something else entirely, the coordinates of every single enemy ship. Captain Kim smiled as he watched the alien fleet move into position around his ship. The Vorthak thought they were the hunters. Soon they would learn the truth about who was really the prey. The 10 minutes passed slowly on both ships. Admiral Krixtal watched from his command chair as his vessels moved into a perfect circle around the human destroyer. Each ship pointed its main weapons at the small Earth vessel. It was like watching a pack of giant wolves surround a single rabbit. All ships report ready to fire, Admiral, his weapons officer announced. Excellent, Krixtal replied. This will be a good lesson for any other humans who think they can resist us. He was about to give the order to fire when something strange happened. The human ship, which had been sitting quietly in space, suddenly came alive with activity. Its engines glowed brighter and its few weapon systems powered up. Are they trying to fight us? Commander Vexrin asked with amusement. Let them try, Krixtal said. It will make no difference. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo stood behind Mi-jin's sensor station. She had been working non-stop for the past 6 hours and her job was almost complete. Status report, Lieutenant, he said. All enemy ships are now in the scanning zone, Captain, Mi-jin replied. I have complete data on their shield frequencies, weapon types, engine signatures, and formation patterns. The information is being transmitted now. Good work, Hyunwoo said. He turned to Jinho at communications. Any word from Fleet Command? Jinho nodded with a small smile. Message received 5 minutes ago, sir. Admiral Kang sends his compliments and says the party can begin whenever you are ready. Hyunwoo felt a surge of relief. Everything had worked perfectly so far. The Indomitable had been broadcasting detailed information about the Vorthak fleet for hours. Every ship position, every weapon type, every weakness Mi-jin could find had been sent to the hidden human fleet. So Young, he called to his tactical officer. How much time until the Vorthak ships are in optimal position? Lieutenant So Young Park checked her displays. 2 more minutes, Captain. They are still closing in. At their current speed, they will be in the exact positions we calculated. Hyunwoo nodded. The plan required perfect timing. The Vorthak had to be in exactly the right spots or the trap would not work. He looked around at his crew. They were all young officers, but they had trained for this mission for months. Each person knew their job and trusted their captain completely. "Taemin," he said to his weapons officer. "Are our systems ready?" Lieutenant Taemin Park grinned. "All weapons charged and ready, Captain. The surprise packages are loaded and waiting." The surprise packages were something special. Human engineers had worked for years to develop weapons that could punch through Vorthak shields. The Indomitable carried only a few of them, but they would be very effective at close range. Admiral Krikstal checked his chronometer. 10 minutes had passed exactly. "Time is up," he announced to his bridge crew. The human captain made his choice. "Open fire on the destroyer. Use minimum power. I want to disable them, not vaporize them completely." "Yes, Admiral," his weapons officer replied. But before the Vorthak could fire their first shot, something impossible happened. The space around them suddenly filled with human warships. They appeared from nowhere, like ghosts becoming real. One moment the Vorthak fleet was alone with their single target. The next moment 200 human vessels surrounded them completely. "What is happening?" Krikstal shouted, jumping from his command chair. His sensor officer worked frantically at his station. "Unknown contacts appearing all around us. How did they get so close without being detected?" "Stealth technology," Commander Vexrin said quietly. "The humans have been hiding in the asteroid field." Krikstal felt cold fear creep up his spine. The asteroid field was millions of kilometers away. How had human ships gotten from there to here without being seen? On the human flagship Prometheus, Admiral Seungmin Kang watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Every Vorthak ship was exactly where the Indomitable had said they would be. The aliens had walked into the trap perfectly. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his communications officer reported. "Excellent," Admiral Kang replied. "Captain Kim has done his job well. Now we do ours." The bridge of the Prometheus was much larger than the Indomitable, but it had the same efficient design. 200 officers worked at their stations, coordinating the movements of the entire human fleet. "Tactical analysis?" Admiral Kang asked. His tactical officer, Commander Yu Jin-sung, studied her displays. "The enemy formation is exactly as predicted, sir. They have arranged themselves in a standard Vorthak encirclement pattern. Their ships are pointing inward toward the Indomitable, which means their rear shields are facing us." "Perfect," Admiral Kang said. "Their own tactical doctrine has become their weakness." He opened a channel to all human ships. "This is Admiral Kang. Operation Mousetrap is now active. All ships begin Phase 1. The human fleet moved with coordination that amazed even their own crews. Instead of attacking in straight lines like most alien races, the human ships split into dozens of small groups. Each group had a specific target and a specific job. Captain Subin Lee commanded the cruiser Defiant. Her ship led a group of 12 vessels toward the Vorthak left flank. Unlike the aliens who waited for orders from their admiral, Subin could make her own decisions about how to attack. "Engineering. Give me maximum power to forward shields," she ordered. "Weapons target their communications array. We want to cut off their ability to talk to each other." Her crew responded instantly. The human ships accelerated toward their targets, moving in unpredictable patterns that made them hard to hit. Back on the Vorthak flagship, chaos was spreading quickly. "Admiral, we are receiving damage reports from 17 ships," his communications officer announced. "The humans are targeting our sensor arrays and communication systems." "Return fire," Krikstal ordered. "All ships engage the human fleet." But giving the order was easier than following it. The Vorthak ships had been designed to fight in formation, with each vessel supporting the others. Now they were scattered and confused, trying to turn their heavy weapons toward targets that moved too fast and changed direction too often. "Why are our ships not responding?" Krikstal demanded. Commander Vexrin worked at a secondary console. "The humans are jamming our command frequencies, Admiral. Many ships cannot receive our orders. This was something new. In all their battles, the Vorthak had never faced an enemy that attacked their ability to communicate. They had always assumed their advanced technology made them immune to such tactics." Captain Hyunwoo watched the battle begin from the bridge of the Indomitable. His small ship was now in the safest place in the entire battle zone, the center of the Vorthak formation, where none of the alien ships could fire without hitting their own vessels. "Mijin, are you still getting good sensor data?" he asked. Yes, Captain, she replied. All human ships are receiving updated targeting information from us. We have the best view of the entire battle. So Young, what is our status? All systems green, Captain. The Vorthak ships around us are too busy with the fleet to worry about us right now. Good. Taemin, prepare our special weapons. We may need them soon. The weapons officer nodded. Ready when you are, Captain. Hyunwoo smiled as he watched the tactical display. The Vorthak had thought they were so smart, surrounding one small human ship, but now that same formation trapped them in the middle of a human attack. Admiral Kriegstall realized his mistake too late. His mighty fleet arranged in perfect order had become a perfect target. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had faced before. They moved like a swarm of angry insects, each group acting independently, but working toward the same goal. Order all ships to break formation, he commanded. Reform into defensive positions. But his communications officer shook his head. Sir, most ships are not receiving our signals. The jamming is too strong. Kriegstall watched in growing horror as his disciplined fleet fell apart. Vorthak captains trained to follow orders from above did not know how to react when those orders could not reach them. Some ships tried to fight alone. Others attempted to form small groups with their neighbors. A few even started to retreat without permission. The humans, meanwhile, seemed to know exactly what to do without any central command at all. The trap was working perfectly. The battle was not going as Admiral Kriegstall had planned. What should have been a quick victory against one small human ship had become a nightmare of confusion and chaos. His massive fleet was scattered across space with many ships unable to receive orders or coordinate their attacks. Damage report, he shouted over the noise of alarms and explosions. His tactical officer, a veteran of dozens of battles, looked pale as he read from his display. 43 ships have lost main communications. 27 ships report major damage to weapon systems. 15 ships are requesting permission to withdraw. Withdraw? Kriegstall roared. We have 800 ships. How can we be losing to 200 humans? The answer came from Commander Vexren, who had been studying the tactical display with growing alarm. Admiral, look at their attack patterns. They are not fighting like any race we have encountered before. Kriegstall looked at the main screen. The human ships moved through space like schools of fish, breaking apart and coming together in ways that seemed random but were clearly planned. When Vorthak ships tried to form defensive lines, the humans simply flowed around them and attacked from behind. They are not following any standard military doctrine, Vexren continued. Each group seems to make its own decisions about where and when to attack. This was true. While the Vorthak fleet waited for orders from their admiral, human captains were making split-second decisions based on what they could see around them. Captain Subin Lee saw an opportunity and took it immediately. Her cruiser Defiant and its escort ships had been attacking Vorthak communications arrays for 10 minutes. Now she noticed that several enemy vessels had lost their ability to coordinate with each other. All ships follow my lead, she broadcast to her group. We are going to punch through their line and hit their supply ships. Her tactical officer looked worried. Captain, those supply ships are protected by 3 battleships. We will be outnumbered. Only if they can work together, Subin replied with a grin. But look at their formation. Those battleships cannot cover each other properly anymore. She was right. The Vorthak ships were trying to maintain their traditional protective formation, but the constant human attacks had forced them to spread out. Now there were gaps that a smart captain could exploit. The Defiant and her escorts accelerated toward the enemy supply ships. The Vorthak battleships tried to intercept them, but they moved too slowly and could not coordinate their fire effectively. Subin's ships slipped between the massive enemy vessels like arrows through a forest. Their weapons struck the supply ships with precision, disabling engines and destroying cargo bays filled with spare parts and ammunition. Target destroyed, reported her weapons officer. The Vorthak fleet just lost a major supply source. Similar attacks were happening all across the battle zone. Human ships found weaknesses in the enemy formation and exploited them quickly, before the Vorthak could respond. On the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo watched the battle with professional interest. His ship was still sitting in the middle of the Vorthak formation, but the enemy vessels around him were too busy fighting the main human fleet to worry about one destroyer. Taemin, he called to his weapons officer, I think it is time for our contribution. Lieutenant Taemin Park smiled and activated his targeting systems. Which ship would you like me to disable first, Captain? Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. Around them, 12 Vorthak cruisers were trying to form a defensive circle. They had their backs turned to the Indomitable, focusing their attention on the human ships attacking from outside. The flagship of that cruiser group, Hyunwoo decided, the one with the extra communication arrays. If we take it out, the other ships will have trouble coordinating. Understood, Captain. Quantum torpedoes loaded and ready. The quantum torpedoes were something new in human weapons technology. Unlike regular missiles, they could phase through most types of shields and hit the target directly. The Vorthak had never seen anything like them. The Indomitable fired 2 torpedoes at point-blank range. The Vorthak cruiser never knew what hit it. One moment, it was functioning normally. The next moment, its main reactor was offline and its command bridge was filled with sparks and smoke. Direct hit, Taemin reported. Target is disabled but not destroyed. The other Vorthak ships in the group suddenly realized they had an enemy in their midst. But when they turned their weapons toward the Indomitable, they found something disturbing. The human destroyer was exactly in the center of their formation. If they fired at it, they would hit their own ships. Clever, Admiral Krikstal admitted grudgingly from his flagship. He had been watching the human destroyer with growing respect. They used our own formation against us, but the Indomitable was not done yet. Engineering Chief Yoonji Nam had been working for the past hour to modify their shield generators. Now she activated her creation. Captain, the mirror shields are online, she reported. The mirror shields were another human innovation. Instead of simply absorbing enemy fire, they reflected it back at the attacker. When the Vorthak ships finally decided to risk firing at the Indomitable, their own weapons energy bounced back and struck their vessels. Impossible, shouted the Vorthak weapons officer on the nearest cruiser. Our own weapons are hitting us. This was the kind of thinking that made humans dangerous opponents. While most alien races tried to build stronger defenses, humans asked a different question. How could they turn the enemy's strength into a weakness? The effect rippled across the battlefield. As more Vorthak ships discovered that firing at human vessels could result in damage to themselves, their rate of fire dropped dramatically. Captains became hesitant to shoot, afraid of what the humans might do with their weapons energy. Admiral Kang, watching from the Prometheus, nodded with approval. The psychological warfare is working. The enemy is becoming afraid of their own weapons. His science officer, Dr. Hai-Rin Kim, had been monitoring the battle from her laboratory deep inside the flagship. Now she contacted the bridge with important news. Admiral, I have completed my analysis of the Vorthak shield technology. I believe I can modify our quantum torpedoes to be even more effective. How much time do you need? Admiral Kang asked. The modifications are already complete, sir. I just need your permission to transmit the new targeting data to all ships. Do it, Admiral Kang ordered immediately. Within minutes, every human ship in the fleet received updated instructions for their weapon systems. The new data allowed their quantum torpedoes to phase through Vorthak shields even more easily, making them nearly impossible to stop. The tide of battle shifted again. Human ships that had been carefully avoiding the strongest enemy vessels now attacked them directly. Vorthak battleships, which had seemed invulnerable at the start of the fight, began taking serious damage. Admiral, we are losing ships, reported Krikstal's tactical officer. The humans have found a way to bypass our shields completely. Krikstal felt despair creeping into his hearts. His mighty fleet, which had conquered 17 star systems, was being torn apart by enemies who fought in ways he could not understand or predict. How many ships have we lost? He asked quietly. 112 destroyed or disabled, sir. Another 67 have suffered major damage. That was almost a quarter of his fleet. Meanwhile, human casualties were much lighter. The aliens had better weapons and stronger shields. But the humans used speed and clever tactics to avoid taking heavy damage. Electronic warfare specialist Dong Hyun-yoon, working aboard the cruiser Vengeance, had been jamming Vorthak communications since the battle began. Now he tried something new. Instead of simply blocking enemy messages, he started sending false orders. All Vorthak vessels in Sector 7, his computer announced in perfect Vorthak military language, withdraw to defensive positions around the flagship. The Vorthak ships in that sector, unable to receive real orders from their admiral, followed the false command. They pulled back from their attacks and moved toward Krikstal's position, leaving gaps in their formation that human ships immediately exploited. Brilliant. Captain Subin Lee said as she watched enemy ships abandon their positions. The humans are making the Vorthak fleet reorganize itself into a worse defensive position. The false orders spread confusion throughout the alien fleet. Some ships followed them, thinking they came from Admiral Krixtal. Others ignored them, suspecting they were fake. The result was complete chaos in Vorthak command structure. Admiral Krixtal realized what was happening, but it was too late. His fleet was no longer under his control. Individual ship captains were making their own decisions, and most of those decisions were bad ones. "Signal all ships," he ordered desperately. "Use emergency frequencies. Tell them to ignore all previous orders and form defensive positions around the flagship." But the emergency frequencies were being jammed too. The humans had studied Vorthak military communications for months and knew how to disrupt every channel. The once mighty alien Armada was falling apart, ship by ship, as human creativity and adaptability proved stronger than superior technology and numbers. The battle was far from over, but the outcome was becoming clear. Admiral Krixtal stood on his bridge and watched his great fleet die. Ships that had conquered star systems were now floating wrecks. Others limped through space with their engines damaged and their weapons offline. The humans had done something he thought was impossible. They had turned his superior numbers into a disadvantage. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving surrender requests from 23 ships. They are asking permission to withdraw from the battle." Krixtal felt his stomach turn cold. Vorthak warriors did not surrender. It was against everything their culture taught. But these crews had faced something they had never encountered before, an enemy that could not be defeated by traditional methods. "Denied," he said harshly. "All ships will continue fighting. We are Vorthak. We do not retreat." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was useless. Many of his ships could no longer receive his commands. The human jamming had destroyed his ability to control his own fleet. On the human flagship Prometheus, Admiral Seung-min Kang watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. The plan was working better than anyone had hoped. The Vorthak formation was completely broken, and their ships were scattered across a huge area of space. "Status report," he requested from his tactical officer. Commander Yu Jin Song consulted her displays. "Enemy casualties continue to mount, Admiral. We estimate they have lost 40% of their effective fighting strength. Human losses are at 12%. Those numbers told the whole story. Despite being outnumbered more than 4-1, the humans were winning decisively. Superior tactics and adaptive thinking were proving more valuable than bigger guns and thicker armor." "What about their flagship?" Admiral Kang asked. "The Dominion's Edge is still operational, but it appears to be having communication problems. Our electronic warfare teams have been targeting their command systems specifically." Admiral Kang nodded. Taking out the enemy flagship would end the battle quickly, but he had a different plan. Sometimes winning a war required more than just destroying the enemy. It required sending a message. Dr. Hai-Rin Kim called from her laboratory. "Admiral, I have some interesting news. I have been analyzing the wreckage from destroyed Vorthak ships and I found something unexpected." "What did you find, Doctor?" "Their technology is actually quite advanced in some areas. More advanced than ours. But they use it in very predictable ways. It is like they built their entire military around one way of fighting, and never considered alternatives." This made sense to Admiral Kang. The Vorthak Empire had been successful for so long that they had stopped adapting. They used the same tactics that had worked for centuries, never realizing that someday they might face an enemy who fought differently. "Can we use their technology against them?" he asked. "Already working on it, sir. I am developing new weapon modifications based on their shield frequency patterns. Give me another 10 minutes and I can make our weapons even more effective." While Dr. Kim worked on her improvements, the battle continued to rage across the star system. Human ships darted between the larger Vorthak vessels like fighters taking down giants. Each attack was precisely targeted to disable specific systems rather than destroy the ships completely. Captain Subin Lee had moved her group to a new target area where several Vorthak battleships were trying to form a defensive line. These were the largest ships in the enemy fleet, each one capable of destroying a human cruiser with a single shot. But their size also made them slow and predictable. "All ships, listen carefully," she broadcast to her squadron. "We are going to use attack pattern Delta. Hit their weapon systems first, then their engines. I want these ships disabled, not destroyed." Her pilots acknowledged the orders and spread out into attack formation. Attack pattern Delta was something they had practiced hundreds of times, but never against ships this large. It required perfect timing and coordination. The human ships accelerated toward the Vorthak battleships from 6 different directions. The alien vessels tried to track them with their main guns, but the humans were moving too fast and changing direction too often. "Firing quantum torpedoes," reported the weapons officer on Subin's ship. The torpedoes struck their targets with devastating effect. The new modifications that Dr. Kim had developed worked perfectly. The Vorthak shields might as well have not existed. One by one, the massive battleships lost their weapons and engines. They were still intact, but they could no longer fight effectively. Their crews were alive, but their ships were helpless. This was happening all across the battlefield. Human commanders had been given specific orders to disable rather than destroy enemy vessels whenever possible. It was a risky strategy that required more skill and precision, but it served an important purpose. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Hyun-woo was dealing with his own problems. The Vorthak ships around his destroyer had finally figured out how to target him without hitting each other. They were moving into new positions that would allow them to fire safely. "Captain," So Young Park called from the tactical station, "6 enemy cruisers are moving to attack positions. They will be able to target us in 3 minutes." "Understood," Hyun-woo replied calmly. "Yoonji, are the mine systems ready?" Engineering Chief Yoonji Nam grinned from her station. "Ready and waiting, Captain." The Vorthak ships have no idea what they are flying into. The mines were another human surprise. While sitting helplessly in the middle of the enemy formation, the Indomitable had been quietly deploying small devices throughout the area. To Vorthak sensors, they looked like pieces of space debris or damaged equipment from the battle, but they were actually quantum mines, weapons that could phase through shields and attach themselves to enemy hulls before exploding. The Indomitable had scattered dozens of them around the battle zone over the past several hours. "Detonate mines in sectors 4 through 7, Hyun-woo ordered. The explosions were small but perfectly placed. Instead of trying to destroy the Vorthak ships, the mines targeted specific systems. Engine controls, weapons targeting, life support systems, all the things that kept a warship functioning in battle. The 6 Vorthak cruisers that had been moving to attack the Indomitable suddenly found themselves drifting in space with dead engines and failing systems. They were not destroyed, but they were completely out of the fight. "Mines were even more effective than we hoped," Yoonji reported with satisfaction. "All 6 targets are disabled." Admiral Krikstal felt desperation growing in his heart as he watched more of his ships fall silent. The humans seemed to have an answer for every Vorthak tactic and a counter for every Vorthak advantage. "How many ships do we have left that can still fight?" he asked his tactical officer. The answer was devastating. "Less than 400, Admiral. And many of those have significant damage. 400 ships should still be enough to defeat 200 humans, but Krikstal was no longer sure of anything. These humans fought in ways that made normal calculations meaningless. "Sir," his sensor officer said urgently, "I am detecting new human reinforcements arriving in the system." Krikstal's hopes died completely. "How many ships?" "I cannot get an accurate count, Admiral. Our sensors are being jammed, but it looks like at least 50 more vessels." The new ships were actually a rescue and salvage fleet that had been waiting just outside the system. Their job was to collect damaged human ships and prisoners from the battle. But to the Vorthak, they looked like fresh reinforcements arriving to finish the job. Fighter pilot Jae Sung-oh had been waiting for his chance to enter the battle. His squadron of 12 small fighters had been held in reserve aboard the carrier Intrepid. Now they received orders to launch and attack specific targets. "All fighters, this is Phoenix Leader," Jae-sung announced as his ship launched from the carrier bay. "Our target is the Vorthak command ship. We are going to cut off their ability to coordinate what is left of their fleet." The fighters were tiny compared to the massive Vorthak vessels, but they were fast and heavily armed with the new quantum weapons. More importantly, they were flown by pilots who had trained specifically for this mission. Jae-sung led his squadron through the chaos of the main battle, dodging debris and weapons fire from both sides. The Vorthak flagship was still heavily defended, but its escort ships were focused on the larger human vessels attacking from other directions. "Phoenix 2, take your element and hit their communication arrays," Jae-sung ordered. "Phoenix 3, target their sensor systems. I will take the main command bridge." The fighters split up and attacked from multiple angles. Their quantum torpedoes punched through the flagship's shields like they were made of paper. Explosions rippled across the massive ship's hull as critical systems failed one after another. On the bridge of the Dominion's edge, Admiral Crixtel felt the ship shudder under the impact of the human weapons. Sparks flew from control panels and smoke filled the air. "Report," he shouted over the alarms. "Multiple system failures," his engineering officer replied. "Communications are down. Sensors are offline. Main weapons are not responding." Crixtel realized that his flagship was no longer capable of commanding the battle. Even if some of his ships could still fight, he had no way to coordinate their actions. For the first time in his long military career. The silence on the bridge of the Dominion's edge was deafening. For the first time in over an hour, the sounds of battle seemed distant and muted. Admiral Crixtal stood among the wreckage of his command center, staring at the tactical display that showed the remains of his once mighty fleet. Of the 847 ships he had brought to this system, fewer than 300 were still capable of fighting. The rest were either destroyed, disabled, or drifting helplessly through space. His own flagship could barely maintain life support, let alone coordinate a battle. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Crixtal felt his shoulders sag. He knew what this meant. The humans were going to demand his surrender. After centuries of Vorthak victories, he would be the first admiral to lose an entire invasion fleet. "Put it on the main screen," he said. The image that appeared surprised him. Instead of the young human captain from the small destroyer, he found himself looking at an older human with gray hair and calm eyes. The man wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer, and his expression was professional, but not cruel. "I am Admiral Shungmin Kang of the Earth Defense Force," the human said. "You are Admiral Crixtal, I presume?" "Yes," Crixtal replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am the commander of this fleet." "What are your terms?" Admiral Kang leaned forward slightly. "My terms are simple, Admiral. Withdraw your remaining ships from this system immediately. Take them back to Vorthak space and never return to human territory." Crixtal blinked in confusion. "That is all? You do not demand our surrender?" "I see no point in unnecessary destruction," Admiral Kang replied. "Your fleet is defeated. Your ships are damaged. Your crews are demoralized. What would I gain by destroying you completely?" This was not how wars were supposed to end. In Vorthak tradition, the loser was either destroyed or enslaved. The winner took everything. But these humans seemed to think differently. "Why?" Crixtal asked. "Why spare us when you could finish what you started?" Admiral Kang smiled, but it was not a cruel expression. "Because, Admiral Crixtal, sometimes the best victory is the one that teaches both sides something valuable. Today you learned that the Vorthak Empire is not invincible, and we learned that we can defend ourselves against any threat." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo watched the conversation between the two admirals with interest. His small destroyer had played a crucial role in the victory, but the real credit belonged to every human who had fought in the battle. "Captain," So Young Park said from her station, "What do you think will happen now?" Hyunwoo considered the question carefully. "I think the galaxy is about to change, Lieutenant. The Vorthak Empire has been the dominant military force for centuries. Now everyone will know they can be defeated." He was right. News of the battle would spread quickly through space. Other alien civilizations that had feared Vorthak expansion would suddenly see new possibilities. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in a single day. Medical officer Sung Ho Cho was busy treating the wounded from both fleets. Human casualties had been remarkably light, but there were still injuries to deal with. More surprisingly, several Vorthak ships had requested medical assistance for their crews. "Doctor," his assistant asked, "should we really help the enemy wounded?" "They are not our enemies anymore," Sung Ho replied as he prepared medical supplies for transport. "They are just people who need help." This attitude was typical of humans, and it confused many alien races. Humans could fight with deadly efficiency when necessary, but they could also show mercy and compassion to defeated opponents. Admiral Crixtal made his decision. His pride wanted him to fight to the end, but his responsibility to his crews demanded otherwise. Too many Vorthak had already died because of his mistakes. "I accept your terms, Admiral Kang," he said formally. "The Vorthak fleet will withdraw from this system and return to our territory." "Good," Admiral Kang replied. "But before you go, I want to make something clear. This battle could have been avoided entirely. Humans are not interested in conquest or empire. We simply want to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. Krixtal nodded slowly. I understand. But I must ask, how did you know we were coming? How did you prepare such an elaborate trap? Admiral Kang exchanged glances with someone off-screen, then looked back at the Vortak commander. We have been watching your empire for some time, Admiral. Your military tactics are very predictable. You always use the same formations, the same strategies, the same approaches to battle. It was not difficult to plan counters for them. This was a painful truth that Krixtal would have to report to his superiors. The Vortak Empire had become so confident in their traditional methods that they had stopped adapting and learning. Meanwhile, humans had studied their enemies carefully and prepared accordingly. One more thing, Admiral Kang added. When you return to Vortak space, I want you to deliver a message to your leaders. Tell them that humanity is willing to establish peaceful relations with any alien civilization that respects our borders, but also tell them what happened here today. Make sure they understand the consequences of aggressive action against human worlds. The transmission ended, and Admiral Krixtal began the humiliating process of gathering his surviving ships for the retreat. As the Vortak vessels limped away from the battle zone, human rescue ships moved in to collect prisoners and salvage valuable technology from the wreckage. Captain Hyunwoo's final log entry would become famous throughout human space. Communications specialist Boram Shin recorded every word as he spoke into the ship's computer. Personal log Captain Hyunwoo Kim, commanding UES Indomitable. The Battle of Kepler 442 has ended with complete human victory. Enemy casualties were heavy but not total. As per Fleet Command's instructions, we have demonstrated that human tactical doctrine can overcome superior numbers and technology when properly applied. He paused in his recording, looking out at the debris field that had once been a Vortak invasion fleet. Today we learned something important about ourselves. We are not the strongest race in the galaxy, nor the most advanced, but we may be the most adaptable. When faced with an impossible situation, humans do not surrender. We improvise, we adapt. We find a way to win. Navigator Yujin Song plotted a course back to Earth where the crew of the Indomitable would be welcomed as heroes. But more importantly, the information they had gathered would help protect other human colonies from future attacks. The effects of the battle rippled across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, 3 other alien empires that had been planning attacks on human territory quietly canceled their invasion plans. The Vortak had been considered invincible, and if humans could defeat them so decisively, perhaps it was better to seek diplomatic solutions instead. 6 months later, the first alien ambassador arrived at Earth to negotiate a trade agreement. 2 years after that, humans were invited to join the Galactic Council as a full member. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive and weak was now recognized as a major power. But perhaps the most important change happened within the Vortak Empire itself. Young officers like Commander Vexrin began questioning their traditional military doctrine. They studied the battle, records, and tried to understand how their seemingly perfect tactics had been turned against them. Some of these officers even requested permission to visit human space and learn about their military academies. They wanted to understand how humans trained their officers to think independently and adapt to changing situations. Admiral Krixtal, despite his defeat, was not executed or exiled. Instead, he was given a new assignment: to study human military methods and develop new Vortak tactics based on what he had learned. His first recommendation was that Vortak commanders should be trained to make independent decisions instead of always waiting for orders from above. The Battle of Kepler 442 became a turning point in galactic history. It proved that technological superiority alone was not enough to guarantee victory. Intelligence, adaptability, and creative thinking could overcome almost any advantage. And somewhere in human space, on the bridge of a small destroyer called the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo Kim smiled as he read the latest intelligence reports. Other alien civilizations were studying human tactics now, trying to understand how such a young species had achieved such a decisive victory. They would learn, eventually. But by the time they figured out how humans had won the Battle of Kepler 442, humanity would have already moved on to new innovations and new strategies. After all, adaptation was what humans did best. The galaxy would never be the same.